The story of Israel begins long ago in a land called Canaan. This is where the first Hebrew people came to live. Around 1200 BCE, the Israelites appeared in the hills of Palestine. We know this because Egyptian texts from that time mention Israel as a people in the land. The land was good for farming and keeping animals. There were olive trees, grapevines, and places to grow wheat. The people lived in small villages on the hills. Each village had only a few hundred people. They built simple houses with 4 rooms. These houses were different from other people's houses in the land. The Israelites did not eat pork, which was also different from other people. They believed in one God called Yahweh. This was very different because most people at that time believed in many gods. The Hebrew Bible tells stories about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. These men were the fathers of the Hebrew people. The Bible says God promised them this land. Archaeological evidence shows that the early Israelites came from the local Canaanite people who already lived there. Over time, these people became the 12 tribes of Israel. They were named after the 12 sons of Jacob, who was also called Israel. Around 1000 BCE, the Hebrew tribes joined together to make one kingdom. This happened because they needed to fight against their enemies, especially the Philistines. The first king was Saul. He was chosen to lead the people in war. After Saul died, David became king. David was a great warrior and leader. He captured the city of Jerusalem and made it his capital. Jerusalem was a good choice because it was in the middle of the land and did not belong to any one tribe before. David brought the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem. This was a holy box that contained the stone tablets with God's laws. David ruled for about 40 years and made the kingdom strong. His son Solomon became king after him. Solomon was famous for building the first temple in Jerusalem around 950 BC. This temple was very beautiful and became the center of worship for all the Hebrew people. Solomon also built many other buildings and made Israel rich through trade. The kingdom under David and Solomon was very large. It reached from the Euphrates River in the north to the Red Sea in the south. However, Solomon made the people pay heavy taxes and work hard on his building projects. This made many people unhappy with his rule. After Solomon died around 930 BC, the kingdom split into 2 parts. This happened because Solomon's son Rehoboam was not wise. When the northern tribes asked him to reduce their taxes and work, he said no. Instead, he said he would make their burdens even heavier. The 10 northern tribes rebelled and chose Jeroboam as their king. They kept the name Kingdom of Israel and made Samaria their capital. The 2 southern tribes stayed loyal to David's family and formed the Kingdom of Judah, with Jerusalem as a capital. The Kingdom of Israel was larger and richer than Judah. It had better farmland and more people. However, it was not as stable as Judah. Israel had many kings, and several were killed by their enemies. The Kingdom of Judah was smaller, but more stable because it kept the same royal family for many generations. Sometimes the 2 kingdoms fought each other, and sometimes they worked together against common enemies. Both kingdoms worshiped God, but they did not always follow God's laws properly. The Bible says God sent prophets to warn the people to return to the right way of living. These prophets included Elijah, Elisha, Isaiah, and Jeremiah. The kingdom of Israel faced many dangers from powerful empires. Around 740 BCE, the Assyrian Empire began attacking Israel. The Assyrians were very strong warriors with iron weapons and war machines. They conquered cities one by one. In 722 BCE, they captured Samaria, the capital of Israel. The Assyrians took many Israelites away from their homeland and brought them to other parts of their empire. They also brought foreign people to live in Israel. This was the end of the northern kingdom of Israel. The people who were taken away became known as the lost tribes of Israel because they never returned. The kingdom of Judah survived longer, but also faced attacks. The Babylonian Empire became very powerful under King Nebuchadnezzar II. In 605 BC, Judah became a vassal state, meaning it had to pay tribute to Babylon. When Judah tried to rebel, Nebuchadnezzar attacked Jerusalem. In 586 BC, the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem and the temple. They took many people from Judah to Babylon as prisoners. This period is called the Babylonian exile. The exile lasted about 70 years. During this time, the Jewish people had to learn how to keep their faith without the temple. They began to meet in small groups and study the Torah more carefully. In 539 BCE, the Persian Empire conquered Babylon. The Persian king Cyrus the Great was kind to the Jewish people. He made a decree that allowed them to return to their homeland and rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. This return is called the Return to Zion. Not all Jewish people returned. Some had made new lives in Babylon and chose to stay there. Those who returned faced many difficulties. The land had been damaged, and other people were living there. The returning Jews were led by men like Zerubbabel and later Ezra and Nehemiah. They began to rebuild the temple around 537 BC. The new temple was finished in 516 BC. It was not as grand as Solomon's temple, but it was still the center of Jewish worship. This began the Second Temple period, which lasted for about 500 years. During this time, the Jewish people were ruled by the Persian Empire, but they had some freedom to practice their religion. The Persians allowed them to have their own governor and follow their own laws in religious matters. The Jewish community also rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem and restored the city. They worked hard to keep their traditions and follow the Torah properly. In 332 BCE, Alexander the Great from Macedonia conquered the Persian Empire. This brought Greek culture to the land of Israel. After Alexander died, his empire was divided among his generals. The land of Israel was first ruled by the Ptolemies from Egypt and later by the Seleucids from Syria. Under Greek rule, many cities in Israel became more like Greek cities. The Greeks built gymnasiums, theaters, and other Greek buildings. They encouraged people to learn Greek language and customs. Many Jewish people liked these new ideas and began to live more like Greeks. This mixing of Jewish and Greek cultures is called Hellenization. However, not all Jews accepted Greek ways. Some believed that Greek culture was against Jewish law and tradition. This created tension in Jewish society. The situation became worse under the Seleucid king Antiochus for Epiphanes around 167 BC. He tried to force all people in his empire to worship Greek gods. He stopped Jewish sacrifices in the temple and put a Greek altar there. This made many Jews very angry. A Jewish priest named Mattathias and his sons, especially Judah Maccabee, started a rebellion against the Greeks. This is called the Maccabean Revolt. After several years of fighting, the Jews won and cleaned the temple. They lit the temple menorah again, which Jews still celebrate as Hanukkah. After the Maccabean victory, the Jewish people had their own kingdom again. This kingdom was ruled by the Hasmonean family, the descendants of Mattathias. The Hasmonean kingdom started around 140 BC and lasted until 63 BCE. The Hasmoneans were both kings and high priests. They expanded their territory to include much of the old kingdom of Israel and even more land. They conquered areas like Samaria, Idumea, and Galilee. They also forced the people they conquered to become Jewish. John Hyrcanus was one of the most successful Hasmonean rulers. He expanded the kingdom and made it strong. However, the Hasmoneans began to fight among themselves over who should be king. Some Hasmoneans became more like Greek kings than Jewish leaders. They lived in luxury and cared more about power than religion. The kingdom also faced pressure from the growing Roman Empire. The Romans were becoming the strongest power in the Mediterranean region. Different Hasmonean brothers asked Rome for help in their fights against each other. This was a mistake because it gave Rome a reason to get involved in Jewish affairs. In 63 BCE, the Roman general Pompey captured Jerusalem. This ended Hasmonean independence, though some Hasmoneans continued to rule under Roman control for a few more years. The Romans ruled the land of Israel for several centuries. At first, they allowed local kings like Herod the Great to rule for them. Herod rebuilt the Second Temple and made it very beautiful. However, Roman rule was often harsh. The Romans collected heavy taxes and did not always respect Jewish customs. Many Jews hated Roman rule and wanted to be free again. Different groups formed to fight against Rome. The Zealots were one such group that used violence against Romans. In 66 CE, a great revolt began against Rome. This is called the First Jewish-Roman War, or the Great Revolt. The war lasted for several years. The Romans sent strong armies to crush the rebellion. The Jewish fighters were brave, but could not match the Roman military power. In 70 CE, Roman forces led by General Titus captured Jerusalem after a long siege. The city was destroyed, and the Second Temple was burned down. Thousands of Jews were killed or taken as slaves. The temple's destruction was a disaster for the Jewish people. Without the temple, they could not offer sacrifices as the Torah commanded. The last Jewish fighters held out at the fortress of Masada until 73 CE. After this defeat, many Jews were scattered throughout the Roman Empire. However, some Jews remained in the land, especially in Galilee. After the Roman Empire became Christian in the 4th century CE, the land of Israel became part of the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantines were Eastern Christians who ruled from Constantinople. They built many churches in the Holy Land, especially in Jerusalem. Christian pilgrims came from all over the empire to visit the places where Jesus had lived. The Byzantine period saw both growth and conflict. The Jewish population had grown again, mainly in Galilee. There were also Samaritan communities. However, there were several Samaritan revolts during this period, which the Byzantines crushed harshly. In 614 CE, the Persian Empire conquered the land from the Byzantines. The Persians had help from some Jewish groups who hoped for better treatment. However, Persian rule lasted only about 15 years. In 629 CE, the Byzantine Emperor Heraclius reconquered the land. But Byzantine rule did not last much longer. In 638 CE, Muslim Arab armies conquered Jerusalem. The Muslim conquest was led by the Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab. The Muslims allowed Christians and Jews to continue practicing their religions, but they had to pay special taxes. The Muslim conquest began a new period in the history of the land. It would remain under Muslim rule for most of the next 1,300 years, except for the time of the Crusades. For many centuries, Jewish people lived scattered around the world. They always remembered the land of Israel and prayed to return there. In the late 1800s, a movement called Zionism began. Zionists believed that Jewish people needed their own country to be safe from persecution. They chose Palestine, the land of ancient Israel, as the place to build this country. Jewish immigration to Palestine increased greatly in the early 1900s. Many Jews came from Europe, especially from Russia, where they faced violent attacks called pogroms. They built new cities like Tel Aviv and established farming communities called kibbutzim. After World War I, Britain controlled Palestine. The British made promises to both Jews and Arabs about the land's future. After World War II and the Holocaust, when 6 million Jews were murdered, support for a Jewish state grew stronger. In 1947, the United Nations voted to divide Palestine into Jewish and Arab states. The Jewish leaders accepted this plan, but the Arab leaders rejected it. On May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion declared the independence of the State of Israel. Immediately, armies from Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq attacked the new state. Israel survived this war and even gained more territory. Since 1948, Israel has fought several wars with its Arab neighbors and has had ongoing conflicts with the Palestinian people. Today, Israel is a modern democracy with a population of about 9 million people, most of whom are Jewish. The country continues to face challenges, but it has also achieved remarkable success in technology, agriculture, and other fields.